Hello and welcome back to the Premier Injuries channel. Today we've got a unique video because, it's the biggest club in the world. It's one of the biggest news stories, but also one of the biggest players as well. We do have to talk about Paul Pogba, but also Erik Ten Hag coming to Manchester United. Now, before we start the video, I want to include, because this was a community kind of led video, we put it out there. Do you want Paul Pogba to keep being at Manchester United? Did you think that he should be given a new contract? Most people actually said goodbye and good riddance on Ben's questionnaire. 66.2%. Only 16.2% of people said yes, keep him, break the bank, or 17% said maybe keep him, but on new terms. This is a big discussion point if he is going to stay at the club. First and foremost, I don't know who to hand it to, because Ben, I think historically we know your position. I don't know if it's changed. So I guess we'll hand it to you to maybe introduce one of the points of, do you think yes, break the bank, goodbye and good riddance, or maybe he should stay at Manchester United?
I'm glad to say I'm in the majority of the votes here. It's got to be a goodbye and an absolute good riddance. Never come back, never set foot in the club, never set foot in the Premier League again. You know what? He's whatever he brought to United that's been tarnished in recent times. I try not to let my emotions become the overriding factor when looking at this, and I broke it down just purely in terms of a availability record, what he brings to United. Let's not even look at performances. First and foremost, we're talking about getting Paul Pogba on the pitch. Recent times, and I have been vocal and very, maybe derogatory, possibly on occasions, with regards to social media posts, with regards to his rehabbing, where this happens. Look, we touch upon times when he's been out with ankle injuries and he's posting social media updates around basketball. But all that aside, purely from a availability standpoint, now, if reports are to be believed, there could be a contract said to be worth around about £500,000 per week. That's £26 million per year for Paul Pogba. Now, if we look back over the last two seasons and then include this season, we're talking about a player with barely above 58% availability, first and foremost. So for 26 million, you're getting a player that at best may only appear in your squad half of the time. This is Premier League games only. They need Paul Pogba, or they need somebody of status and standing in that team to even push them into elevate them towards that Champions League spot. Then you dig a little bit deeper and you talk about, well, actually, when Paul Pogba actually starts within that Manchester United team, that is just over 44% of the time, going back almost what would be 3 seasons. We're talking 2 full seasons and up to and including game week 32. Now, for a player with such a big outlay, with such a big talent, for me, that brings into question, one, where's his motivation here? 2, can he be trusted? I certainly don't think Ralph Rangnick trusts him, given the fact that he didn't even start him last weekend, and to think or even consider offering him this, break the bank money deal to keep him at your squad, given the fact that how much unrest it will cause within that United camp. I think it's absolutely ludicrous. I'd pack his bags for him and I'd walk him to the station myself and see him out of the club. I think he's an absolute disaster. He's got to be gone for me.
Raj, with the question of the injury record then, is this something that, if he does sign for Manchester United and is included in Ten Hag's plans, is this something that the club need to be worried about? The type of injuries that he's had, does that kind of suggest to you that these could be recurring? And, he is getting older now. Is that a problem going forward, even if it isn't Manchester United he signs for, whoever he signs for?
Yeah, it's certainly a question, especially when it comes to the, he had like the hip flexor injury. So the soft tissue injuries, are going to open yourself up to re-injury. And that's always the concern when you start to see those develop. And I think and not even developed, but one of those he just picked up in training. And I think it ended up, grade 2/3 just on a kick in training and nothing high intensity. And so that's another potential yellow flag. And so I think, to Ben's point, it's really about, again, as you know, what term I'm about to say, it's risk reward, right? The risk is you're going to pay him this massive outlay, like Ben just talked about, and then he's not, and he hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy. And the reward is, okay, he's on the pitch, but what are the odds of each, right? And so you have to look at that, and not just that, but the opportunity cost. United is a team that needs to undergo some change. And Ten Hag, from all accounts, I think Fabrizio Romano reported that he wants kind of more personnel decisions. So he's going to try to turn over some of that roster as well. So do you put this massive outlay into a player who has only started 44% of games, or do you put that somewhere elsewhere, right? And really turn over that roster and turn over the culture of the team, something they've needed now, for years. We'll see how their board and management responds to that, because they've had strong-headed managers before, Mourinho, for example, right? But they're going to need a lot of change there. And so with Pogba, I won't pack his bags for him, but if he does, if he doesn't come back, I don't think it's that big of a deal, to be honest, especially at that number. And if they're competing against PSG, who's his main suitor, it's going to be a big number. So, I tend to align with Ben on this one.
Just to you, Raj, though, with the, your famous phrase, the risk reward situation, though, with Manchester United, is it less of a risk because of the fact that they have some of the biggest pockets in world football? Their outlay on him realistically will not affect their ability to sign any big players over the summer. They have such a huge wage bill. She said there's a lot of other players that could be cut from it. Whereas the reward, as we've seen with the Pogba that plays for France, is a World Cup winning midfielder, somebody that bosses the midfield. And maybe with the management of somebody like Ten Hag could bring the best out of him. Is that reward maybe outweighing the risk there?
I think it's lesser so than other clubs, of course, because like you said, the outlay is less of a dent in their budget, but it's still, that's still a good number right there. 26 million pounds, right? Where else could that be spent? And so that's their funds still aren't limitless, right? They still have some cap. So if you're spending 26 million, we know who else could you get over the line with that type of money? And that's really the question, I think, for them. And another question becomes, I think Ben kind of touched on, you have a player making 500,000, and does that cause unrest amongst other people within the club, right? For a player that you've offered that much money to, maybe some players don't think he deserves it for whatever reason. So that's the other factors you have to consider as well.
With the Pogba situation, though, do you think that, I guess this is a question to both of you and whoever wants to take this first, do you think that he's wrongly maligned? Because quite a lot of the problems at Manchester United over the seasons have been put on him as an individual, whereas it's the 11 men on the pitch and it's the background at the club and the management higher up have, in my opinion, have failed Pogba himself. Because, when you buy a marquee signing like that, you either play to his strengths, you build a team around him, or you find a way of making it work. Whereas they brought in managers and they brought in systems and they brought in players that do not work well, that do not work in tandem with him. And he's had quite a lot of the blame, and then you compare it, as I've given the example of France, they've got competent defensive midfielders, they've got high quality defenders. And so you kind of have to question if a lot of these problems are down to Pogba. The injury record obviously is something that you do have to say maybe is slightly down to just genetics, his body, whatever. But at the same time, maybe we could have seen a better Pogba if they'd had a proper system in place. I don't know, Raj, Ben, who wants to take that as, Pogba being the scapegoat?
Well, I take on board your points, and you raised some good points there. But for me, Pogba puts himself out there on a pedestal. He puts himself out there to be shot at. And, for your high status, high profile players within the squad, you want them to be leaders. You want them to go out and you want to play for the badge, you want to play for the club, and you want to give them 100%. Pogba isn't a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 player. Pogba is a 9 or he's a 4. He's not interested. He's not motivated. He couldn't care less. He's lazy. If he doesn't get his own way, he isn't interested. If I'm paying X number of pounds every week to one of my highest earners, it doesn't matter whether he should play at left back, right back, centre forward. It's up to him to go out and do a job for himself, for the club, for the supporters, not, like I say, give lackluster performances and then go away on international duty and Skype to the press, feed stuff to his agent, get them to leak stuff, have a go at the club, put the club in a bad light. And it's those things, it's a culmination of all of those things. I see what Pogba could bring at the highest level when he's on his game and when he wants to, but that is a very, very small percentage of the time when he wants to do that. For the remainder, it's how that attitude, that cascades and that poison seeps through the squad. And look, how can the rest of the squad see somebody who calls into question a lot of things at the club, a lot of things that maybe should kept behind, closed doors? How can they see that player being rewarded with not only a new contract, but becoming the highest earner, not within the club, but within the Premier League?
I mean, just on that point, I don't know about his own personal life. I'm not really one to pay too much attention to the kind of media and the speculation and things like that. But I do take umbrage with people that say that Pogba is lazy, because he's a very good presser of the ball. And if you kind of look at maybe the profile of a midfielder that Ten Hag would want, he seems to fit the bill in many instances. And this is maybe why I would say that they should roll the dice and maybe give him a contract, but with conditions, because he knows the Man United way, he knows the setup and everything. But he is also good at the things that Ten Hag would look for in a midfielder. And just for it, he's in the top 7th percentile for attacking third pressures over the last 365 days. I mean, Raj, do you kind of buy into this narrative at all?
I think there's two sides to it. I think the problem with Pogba is what Ben touched on, is that when for a player who you're giving that much money to, who's supposed to be a premier player, you expect him to be more adaptable and not just contribute when it's within his own comfort zone, right? I think we've seen with Pogba, when things don't go his way or he's played, out of position, it does affect him. And so, whereas other guys, it doesn't affect their work rate as much. And so that's part and parcel. But at the other side of the coin, right? If you're a club, you want to put players in the role that they're most comfortable in. And I think Pogba has gone through multiple managers as well. And so that doesn't make it easy. So I see both sides of it. Again, the question just becomes, do you roll the dice on someone you're going to pay that much money to? And what's the probability of him succeeding, right? And so, and then the other side of the coin is, who else could you go out and get and have a fresh start there as well, and wipe the slate clean with a new manager coming in? So I think you have to consider all those aspects. What if he does come back and gets re-injured, and then which is a possibility or whatever it is. And so can you rely on him? How reliable of a player is he at this stage? And that's really the question for me. I think, Ten Hag certainly fits his strengths, Pogba's strengths, but there's so many other factors at play here as well.
Yeah, and I think the problem with Pogba is he's almost blamed for the factors that aren't in his control.
Yeah.
With the Ten Hag management situation as well, the thing is the club is going to need a lot of overhaul, and I don't think the kind of creative midfielder role, if they've got a Pogba, they need to keep him, because they're going to be they need to. I don't know if they will. We'll see how competent the management at Manchester United now are after the Rangnick and Ten Hag experiment, but they need a CDM, they need new centre-backs who can press, they need new wing-backs who can press, and they probably need a more pressing forward as well, because let's be honest, Ronaldo does not fit that bill. And I think Pogba is maybe one of the players there that you can comfortably say he has it within him. It's just getting that inspiration. I can see Ben itching though to kind of say no, he's not the one for this situation. I feel like Pogba has the ability. You can see it with France, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Didier Deschamps can bring that out, especially with the players that France have at their disposal. Conte obviously makes him a better player, but at the same time, it is not a coincidence at all that Didier Deschamps seems to be able to manage his personality as well, Ben.
Look, I do agree with some of your points. You will not change my stance on where I believe Pogba should be. In my own mind, I actually think Pogba is gone. I think he had his head turned a long time ago, and this offer is, it pales in the insignificance of what he can maybe get at PSG, or certainly in terms of the team and the stature that he'd gained by going there. It's maybe a last roll of the dice from United. Maybe that's in discussions with Ten Hag saying, let's do all we can to keep Pogba. That might come out, once that contract's been signed, and once, we maybe get an opportunity to hear from the potential, the new manager. But I know what you're saying. And look, undoubtedly, on his day, he can deliver a performance, and he can win a game, and he can turn a game, in an instant. But, just purely take my emotional side out of it, going purely on the numbers. Do you want to be spending £500,000 per week, regardless if you're United or not, on a player that will only start less than 1 in every 2 games in the Premier League?
It's a difficult question, and maybe the last question to both of you, though, is the fact that they are offering him a contract. What does that say to you about the state of Manchester United? Is that Erik Ten Hag already kind of pulling the strings and saying, I want this player, or does it seem to be the same problems recurring, that they're focusing too much on retaining or purchasing superstars? Raj, is this going to be a repeat of what we've seen so many times before at the club?
I mean, I think if you're Erik Ten Hag and you see a player like Pogba who fits your style, of course you're going to push to keep him, right? Because to you as a manager, you're not that concerned with finances, right? That's for someone else to decide. You're going to push for the players that you want and you think fit your system. So, I understand why they're offering him, and I think it probably is coming from him significantly, because I think that would also be a good kind of sign for him that the board will listen to him. So maybe the board is willing here, right, to get him to do, to offer that almost as like a goodwill, as, hey man, we are listening to you. Will that last? We'll see. And so I think it could not be. I understand the context of it, and so I think to me it's still to be TBD. So we'll see.
And Ben, just a quick maybe summarising point. Do you think that this says anything about the state of Manchester United desperation that they want to keep him?
Absolutely, and how United try and fix the solution. Let's throw money. Let's throw more money, and let's keep on throwing money. Well, there's got to be a point where you take a step back, and yes, we're one of the richest clubs in the world, but ultimately you need to address that underlying cause, that root problem, and if that's getting rid of that core, that nucleus of players within the squad, and a reset and a refresh, and you take a step back for maybe a season or two to then move forward from a new platform, then so be it. I mean, it looks like, as it currently stands, that United aren't certainly going to qualify for Champions League football this season. So, what better time to do that? What have they got to lose?
And so,
yeah,
I don't know if I need to ask the question, quick one-word answer to both of you. I don't know if you want to expand on your point there, Raj, but I guess no from you, Ben. No new contract to Pogba.
Bye-bye.
Raj, contract, maybe?
And I would say, honestly, if I had, I would say no overall. And I think Ben's last point is a key thing. United has to understand the position they're in. A real realistically and what needs to be done in order to get back to where they are. I mean, the counter example is what we've seen with Arsenal, right? Where they had years of trying to hold on. We saw where it went. They finally said, okay, we're going to have patience, tear it down, rebuild that foundation, right? Hear all that outside noise doesn't matter. We're going to rebuild it the right way. The question becomes, is United willing to do that? Right now, just like Ben said, would be the time. They're already on a down spiral, right? Why not, at this point, just pull all the Band-Aids off, right? And actually treat the issue, right? And so that's why, in the end, for me, it's also a no.
Well, for me, I'm going to say the maybe, but with conditions, maybe a number of games or performance or certain indicators in the contract. But I just don't think that Pogba's the problem at Man United. I think that, if anything, the club has failed him. But I hope we haven't failed you with a good broadcast here. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's a new, different style of content that we're going to be trying here. So hit that subscriber button, leave a like, and comment below if you've got any questions. We always like to read your comments. But for now, we're going to wish you the best of luck. Have a great